Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to be your guide today. We're going to look at a truly incredible, highly orchestrated biological blueprint, the menstrual cycle. We're going to use the screen right here as our interactive whiteboard to completely decode this monthly phenomenon. We'll break down the timeline, visualize the hidden chemical triggers, and literally map out exactly how the body prepares for the creation of life. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive into this because right off the bat, we kind of need to shift our mindset. So many people view menstruation as just a single event, right? Just a few days out of the month. But honestly, it's so much more than that. It's a finely tuned symphony. It's an incredibly complex, interconnected 28-day process, governed by this invisible network of hormones. If you look closely at the sweeping vectors on screen, you'll see how every single phase seamlessly triggers the exact next step. So here's our agenda flowchart for today. First, the symphony of the cycle. Then, mapping the 28-day blueprint. Third, the invisible hormonal conductors. Fourth, tackling common exam questions. And finally, busting menstrual cycle myths. This breakdown is going to be super practical, not just for exam prep, but for real-life planning too. All right, part one, the symphony of the cycle. More than just menstruation. So the absolutely crucial starting point is defining what this cycle actually is. By definition, the menstrual cycle is a monthly series of biological changes uniquely designed to prepare the female body for a potential pregnancy. Notice the standard blueprint call out here. It typically lasts about 28 days. But I want to make it super clear that human bodies aren't machines. That 28-day figure, that's just a textbook model. Natural variations in this timeline absolutely do occur from person to person, and that's perfectly normal. Moving right along to part two, mapping the 28-day blueprint, the biological timeline. Okay, so let's start on the far left of our timeline here. Day one marks the very beginning of the cycle, which is menstruation. See those downward pointing arrows? They represent the shedding phase. For roughly 3 to 7 days, the body is actively clearing out the unfertilized egg, blood, and dead tissue from the uterine lining. Now, visually track that timeline marker to the right, because once that shedding is complete, the body immediately kicks off its preparation phase all over again. And what's really fascinating here is the dimensional shift. Once menstruation ends, the body doesn't just, take a break. Notice those upward pointing vectors? That shows the uterine lining physically thickening. The body is actively rebuilding. It's constructing this highly nutrient-rich environment to prepare for the potential implantation of a fertilized egg. It's literally a phase of rapid upward growth and preparation. Now follow the timeline right to the exact middle. Day 14. This is a massive milestone, ovulation. This is where a single egg is released from just one of the ovaries. And here's the kicker. If fertilization doesn't happen to that egg, our physiological sensors detect it. Hormone levels drop sharply. You can actually visualize that as a steep downward curve right there, which then triggers the shedding of that thickened uterine lining, and the entire 28-day cycle repeats itself. Let's look closer at part three, the invisible hormonal conductors, estrogen and progesterone. This split screen layout brilliantly illustrates the dynamic relationship between our two main players. On the left side, trace that line for estrogen. Notice how it dramatically spikes and peaks right before ovulation. That intense chemical signal is exactly what forces the uterine lining to thicken. Now, jump over to the right side. Progesterone takes over after ovulation. Its job, which you can see represented by those solid stabilizing lines, is to maintain that thickened lining. Think of it like this. Estrogen builds the house, and progesterone keeps the walls standing. All right, on to part four, tackling common exam questions, working the math. So here's a classic word problem you're almost guaranteed to encounter. Let's say Michelle's period started on April 14th. Assuming a typical 28-day cycle, when is her next period? I want you to actively look at this problem on the screen. How do we visually map out this calculation? Just think about the chronological math for a second. Let's walk through this as a chronological step-by-step flowchart. Step 1, place your starting marker exactly on April 14th. Got it? Step 2, draw a vector forward, adding precisely 28 days. And remember, you gotta account for April having 30 days. Step 3, your marker lands exactly on May 12th. The mathematical logic here is completely transparent. If you just follow these visual steps, you can literally replicate this with any date they throw at you on a test. But hey, before we leave the exam prep behind, here are some major traps you absolutely need to avoid. First, menstruation typically lasts 3 to 7 days. Please don't fall for that tricky multiple choice option that says 6 to 7 days. Second, look closely at this diagram of the ovaries. Only one egg is released from one ovary during ovulation, not from both simultaneously. Seriously, read your exam questions carefully so you don't confuse these critical mechanisms.
Which brings us to part 5, busting menstrual cycle myths. Fact versus fiction.
Let's break down some common misconceptions. Myth: menstruation is the whole cycle. Fact: it is just one single phase of the larger 28-day blueprint. As we've clearly visualized today, menstruation is just the shedding instrument. It's one piece of the much grander symphony that makes up the entire monthly cycle. And here's another huge one: myth. Ovulation happens at the exact same time each month, like some perfectly programmed machine. Fact: the human body is super dynamic. While day 14 is our structural textbook model, notice the warning labels popping up here? Real-life variables like stress, illness, and your overall health actively shift and bend this timeline. It's a highly adaptable biological process, not a rigid mechanical clock. Okay, let's lock all this knowledge in. Here is your quick-fire, high-yield recap. Literally take a mental snapshot of this list right now. The cycle prepares the body for pregnancy. It lasts roughly 28 days. Menstruation is just the first phase. Ovulation peaks around day 14, and the whole shebang is masterfully regulated by the chemical gradients of estrogen and progesterone. I want to leave you with this final kind of mind-blowing thought. If our bodies can autonomously orchestrate this immensely complex 28-day biological symphony entirely in the background, thickening tissue, spiking hormones, releasing microscopic eggs, what other invisible biological marvels are happening inside you right at this very moment? The sheer complexity of human biology is just staggering. Thank you so much for joining me to decode this blueprint today. Keep exploring, and I'll see you next time.